Classics is sponsored by WCBE 90.5 FM, Columbus, Ohio, and is produced by John DeSando and Johnny DiLoretto. Listen to shows online at wcbe.org.
I'm John DeSando.
And I'm Mary Yerina.
And this is Cinema Classics. And Mary, thanks for sitting in for Johnny DiLoretto again.
Well, thank you, Johnny, for the opportunity.
And it's been a great pleasure to have you here. I think it's the first time in the history of Cinema Classics where we've had the same guest 2 weeks in a row.
I feel humbled and privileged by that honor.
I'd have to say, was the last one It's Movie Time?
Yes, it was.
All right, so you see, you've been on both of our shows 2 weeks in a row. That is absolutely the first time. We won't let it happen again. But we have a most interesting film today called 13 Lives by an acclaimed director, Ron Howard. What's it about, Mary? I guess it's the easiest way to start.
Well, unless you yourself were living in a cave in the summer of 2018,
right.
You probably are familiar with the story of the 12 boys from a soccer team in Thailand and their coach who went in to explore a local cave for some fun after practice, and an early unexpected monsoon flooded the cave and trapped them in the cave. And the following 3 weeks, a lot of effort was put into rescuing them, and they indeed all were rescued alive.
Just amazing. I think maybe the only surprise we'll leave on our show is we won't tell the audience how they're extracted. Does that sound right to you?
I would think that's fair.
Although it wouldn't be, it's history.
It's history, but it also, at the time, their methodologies were not shared and were not known publicly.
Mary, I think Howard does a terrific job of making this a tense moment. Not the people in the cave, but rather the people on ground trying to figure out how to save these people.
That is very true, and I found that to be really the emotional hook, which amazes me that Ron Howard can take these real life stories that we know the outcome. Some people have referred to this as Apollo 13 underwater, which I think is fair,
yes.
But I had the same reaction in terms of the intensity that you feel and the emotions that you feel in the moment, both from the rescuers, who are this ragtag hodgepodge group of Brits and Irishmen and those from Australia who do cave rescue dives professionally. And they really were the ones who had the skills to go fully into this labyrinth of a cave and make it to the boys and the coach, and then are the ones that really are extracting them from the cave.
You know, you a good comment about Apollo 13. Certainly, this is the one movie that's going to come to your mind is to say, well, how does Ron Howard qualify for this? The only other one I can think of is Backdraft.
In terms of the rescue, but that wasn't a real life story.
Yeah,
so.
and I'm just trying to think of what, you know, is there anything else in his oeuvre that I can't think. I mean, we'll look at that, I guess, a little bit later. I'd like to continue our conversation on this.
Yeah, but you really, I mean, I think in fairness with Apollo 13, you had more of the emotion and focus on the astronauts. There was the rescuers as well, and the intensity of the processes they were going through. But in this particular movie, it's really focused on everything that surrounded the cave and the rescuers themselves. And in particular, the parents are constantly present, but one in particular, Baum, I think is how it's pronounced, a young actress who really becomes the emotional focal point for the agony that the parents are going through. And it's really, I was surprised because it is such a well-known story and such recent history. You know, I was surprised at how emotional I was getting and how tense I was getting as the rescue was approaching and as it happened.
It certainly has more of our point of view. We're not going to be in the cave.
Exactly.
But it would be all the conflict and the tension that comes on the surface. And yes, that struck me too as really a very bright way of approaching this, because we'd expect to be claustrophobic. We'd expect to be down there going there with them and bringing them out and, hitting the side of the cave and choking and to get our oxygen and so on. I expected to do all that, and it didn't happen. And that's just a different way of looking at it, and I think the tension is every bit as good, if not better than, to take us to the surface. Well, we got an idea.
Right, and I think especially with the male rescue crew that we were talking about earlier that came together, these are all pretty unusual characters because of what they do.
Yes.
And they're also extremely stoic.
Yeah.
In fact, one of the lead rescuers, Rick Stanton, played by Viggo Mortensen,
Right.
barely says anything if it's not related to the actual work that they're doing.
Yeah, what is somebody, he's been called grumpy, and you sent me some articles that indicate the difference, and the difference was he is far more animated in real life.
Apparently,
Yeah.
but they chose to play
Yes.
this stoic line, which makes perfect sense, because I think Viggo did it very, very well, but it also is, for what they're doing, and the possibility that, these young boys and their coach are going to die, you have to remain stoic and focused on the job at hand, because they themselves are at risk. Every time they went into the cave and tried to progress further to find what chamber these boys and their coach may have been in, these were 6 to 7 hour dives one way
Yeah.
for them.
Yeah.
Through stalagmites and stalactites and tight crevices and,
Oh.
and currents, very intense currents of water gushing through this cave system. They themselves were at risk and they had to focus on the job at hand. So I understood why they were so stoic, which made the emotion that they displayed as the rescue was happening even more intense and moving, I thought.
One of the minor characters, who's the governor,
Mhm.
intrigued me because in the end he was willing to shoulder the responsibility, because any slip up, any lost life, and they would have been felt responsible, and the public would have probably made them responsible, when in fact, no, it was almost inhuman. I think there was a point there where they expected the people to die in the cave. They
Yeah.
just had no idea how to get them out. That's, to me, the exciting part of this, is the ingenious solution that they had. Mary, what about the white liberation?
Well,
Does he handle it well? That's right.
I think he does, because one, these are the experts on,
Yes.
they're white
Yes.
Anglo-Saxon men. They're the experts on cave rescue around the world.
Yes.
So there's no avoiding that. But I think the partnership that developed between the people of Thailand in the surrounding area, their own Navy SEALs.
Who failed, really?
Well,
They got to 3. They got to chamber 3.
they got
or
to
whatever.
chamber 3, but it was pointed out several times in the film, you're trained in open sea diving.
Yeah.
This is cave diving. It's
Yes,
completely
yes.
different. But what was referenced, but maybe could have been elevated a little bit more, was even though this expert team ultimately did the rescuing, they had this whole team of Navy SEAL divers that not only a doctor with them made it to the boys and the coach and stayed with them
Yes,
for
yes.
several days because they themselves ran out of oxygen, but you had a whole network of Navy SEALs that were positioning oxygen tanks
Right.
along the route as far as they could, and were of great assistance when the boys and coach were being extracted, of getting them the rest of the way. With this network that they established.
I think it's a great example of collaboration.
It absolutely was.
And in the end, we're really not deifying anybody, but rather the whole group. I mean, there are thousands of people apparently involved in this, Mary.
Thousands of people, and one thing that I didn't realize, and I hope it's not a spoiler,
Go ahead,
is that an American water expert born in Thailand worked with the local villagers at
Yes.
first, and then had the approval of the governor to develop systems to divert water off the mountain and from going down into the cave system
Yes.
out into basically rice paddy fields that ruin the local
Poor farmers
crops.
gave up,
But-
encouraged and helped them,
Yeah,
and ruined their crop.
ruined their crops because it was for the
Just-
chance that they could
Yeah.
save the boys and buy them enough time. And I don't think this is a spoiler either, but it's shot very much like a docudrama.
Yeah.
And even at the end, there are title slides that kind of complete the story for you
Yes.
and tell you what
Yes.
happened. And one that was just absolutely shocking to me was how much water is diverted
Oh.
off the mountain during these 3 weeks.
Thousands of gallons.
Millions.
Right, every
Millions
hour,
of
every
gallons,
half hour.
yeah.
It is just.
Hundreds of thousands of gallons of water every hour
Yeah.
are being diverted off this mountain.
And I love the way they take their bamboo and they make little pipes
They,
out of
when
it.
they ran out of official
Right.
pipes, they cut bamboo in half.
Oh,
Just-
Mary Yerina, I have to stop us.
We do, because I'm
Well,
gonna start spoiling more, and I apologize.
No, we have more to say on Double Take. It's our podcast, which our audience can go to WCBE and look at the podcast experience and find Double Take, and then we'll be going quite a bit more. So Mary, first of all, where can people see this? Do you remember?
This film is available on Amazon Prime.
Right, okay, so on Amazon Prime if you want, I think you may have to pay a few dollars to see it. What doesn't have-
It's actually free with your
Is it-
subscription.
Great, great, thank you, yes. And it's called 13 Lives, and given our discussion, it is really about people and about lives, isn't it?
It absolutely is, and I would encourage you to see it on the biggest screen possible.